Welcome back to Talking Devils podcast, brought to you by talktodevils.co.uk, your number one independent Manchester United podcast. I am your host, Keane. I am joined today by former Manchester United players Phil Marsh and Lee Lawrence. Lee dropped out there for a second, but he will return to the stream. We're here today to talk all things Manchester United, all the latest news. And we would also talk the former Diogo Dalot. We'll also be talking about Jadon Sancho and his England snub. And also we will be talking to what the season so far and kind of how we assess it and have Manchester United's expectations as a fan base. Should they change considering the start we've had? But we will discuss all this on the podcast, guys. So do smash like the video, hit the subscribe button. And as always, we do appreciate your support. First of all, Phil, it's the international break. And as always on international breaks, there's always a story. There's always, I suppose, a situation, the drama, you name it. But it looks like, again, the lightning has struck again. There's a big story, obviously, been released in the last couple of days regarding Harry Maguire. It looks like he's blaming other people for his form. According to sources, he's saying that David De Gea is one of the reasons why his form has been so poor. He's also spoke about the lack of pace around him in the team. And he most notably spoke about Ruben Diaz, saying if Diaz was in the United team and I was in the City team, Diaz would be playing the exact way that I'm playing. And again, this according to sources, we're not saying Harry actually said this, but it has been put out there into the media. Phil, when you hear, I suppose, reports like that, and again, it's the club captain that's been related into these reports. How are you feeling? And what's your initial reaction with regards to this?
If I'm honest, I think it's a load of rubbish, to be honest. I think, as a player, you've got to take responsibility for yourself. You've got to take responsibility for your own performances. Okay, other players around you might have off days, might not have, the best form, but yeah, you can only look after yourself. And for me, I think, I'm just trying to, put myself back in the times when I was playing at Man United. And I would never even have dreamed of, putting the blame on any of my teammates or anybody else. If I wasn't playing well, if things weren't working for me, then, at the end of the day, that's my own sort of stuff that I need to get myself sorted. I need to either work harder, I need to do more stuff off the pitch, on the training ground after training. And I need to sort of look at, my lifestyle and all that kind of thing. But it's obviously, it's been a sort of sticky sort of period for him. He's not been in the best of form for whatever reason. Now, whether he thinks that's because of other players, I'm just going off my own personal opinion. I think as a professional footballer, you need to be, big enough and man enough to accept, if you're not playing well, the criticism that comes with being at a club like Man United. Being the captain of the club, you've got to be thick-skinned because you're going to get a lot of stuff coming your way, regardless of, performances. That just comes with the territory. And for me, I just feel as though he's sort of not doing himself any favours by doing this, because as a player, you need to, be the person that pulls your way back into form if you're out of form. You need to have more about you as a person to sort of, rather than blaming other people, be a person that can, do that on your own and sort of, battle your way through hard times and come out the other side of it. And I think for me now, with the way that things have gone in terms of the back four that's settled now and Varane and Martinez doing so well, I think as well as this now with the sort of comments that he's made, it's going to be sort of doubly hard for him now to get back into the team. I think, if he'd knuckle down and just, been training well, obviously do his stuff for England and, try and work hard to get back into the team, then he would have sort of, had half a chance. I think now with coming out with all these comments, I think he's, shot himself in the foot massively.
And Lee, if you're sitting in that dressing room, you're a teammate of Harry's. And obviously, look, we've gone through with Hugh. I know this last 6 games, we've played very well. And if we'd be brutally honest about Harry Maguire hasn't been part of that good form, especially obviously post-Brentford. When you look at the last, I suppose, 12 to 18 months of Manchester United going on a downward spiral and Harry Maguire actually being a really big part of that, what are you thinking as a teammate of Maguire sitting there and hearing that news?
I think Phil's just kind of hit the nail on the head with everything he said. Everything I wrote down about it, Phil's more or less just said on the podcast there. You don't throw your teammates under the bus, do you? It's an unwritten rule. You know, you have to take your own responsibility. Looking for excuses, he's looking for ways. Obviously, he's frustrated because he's gone from being club captain and having a period of form before, this year and maybe last, where he was one of the best centre backs, if not the best centre back in England. The people who ranting and raving about him. Ten Hag's come in, obviously doesn't fancy him, which off his performance is rightly so. But if I was in that dressing room now, especially when the team looked like we're starting to get somewhere compared to where we was last year, and we're progressing well, and then your club captain comes out, and again it's a big if he said it, you know what I mean. It's not been, let's not chuck him under the bus again. It's not necessarily true. It's pointing that he has said it. Don't get me wrong, but until it gets proven, then I don't really want to. Dig him out too much about it. Sorry, the dog's just going mental. 2 seconds.
This is what I love about live YouTube. You just never know what's going to happen. But this is what I just love about live.
Sorry about that. That dog's going absolutely crazy. Someone's at the door. Yeah, I was just saying, we don't want to dig him out too much, but I feel like if obviously it does come out that he's said these things and he's done what he's done, there's no way it's gonna be a real uphill battle to get back in that starting 11, if not the squad. He's probably made a rod for his own back, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see much of him and he inevitably leaves rather soon.
Yeah, and my thoughts on this is that, like, look, if it is true, then look, he has an uphill battle in terms of getting back into the team. Like, he already had that regardless of these comments, because Ferran Martinez has been exceptional in the last 4 games, and like we've seen how like structurally, the defense looks so much better. I know we're going to talk about Dalot on that in a minute, but like, you're the club captain, you're the most expensive defender in history. Like, if you're if you're dropped and you're not playing well, right? Look, yes, there's times where maybe some people around you might make you look worse than you actually are. Like, that can happen, but for your own form, you must take accountability. Whatever, like whoever else is playing poorly, just look after yourself and look after your own game first and foremost. And then look, if others around you aren't pulling the weight when you are, then look, fair enough. You can then, you can shout at them. You can tell them they're not playing well. But when you're not playing well, you can't start digging other people out.
See, that's the difference. What I was going to say, sorry, Keane, is when we was at the club, if you wasn't having a good game or you needed to pull your socks up, you'd like to Roy Keane's and you like to that kind of player would tell you. Don't get me wrong, they would say, you're making the team worse. Come on, get going. But it was the club captain, and he was playing 9 times out of 10. He was having a great game and he was on form all the time. So you can take it when you've got a leader, a natural leader who's doing really well for the team, and he's pulling that team out the crap, basically, for wanting of a better word.
I think as well, Leon. Yeah, I think as well, Leon, that just picking up on your point there, I think when it was done, when we was there, a lot of the time it was constructive criticism, and lads was sort of, thick-skinned enough to take that on the chin and realise themselves, right, I'm not pulling my weight here, I've not started the game well, I need to get sort of into gear here and put my ideas up. Whereas now, I think because it's a snowflake generation, players are sort of, too easily sort of offended, and, if people aren't, performing to the levels and people have a go at them, they think they're too good to be told otherwise. And I think that's where, as we've talked about loads of times, football has changed in the fact that now, because a lot of stuff on social media is going about and, the game's scrutinised a lot more than probably it was when we was there. I think, it's easy for sort of players to, chuck people under the bus and not take accountability, as we've just said.
Yeah, and I think accountability is very important here. And again, if you're captain of the side, you should be leading by example. Like, there's a lot of young players in that squad, and who actually, there's some of them who've struggled in the last 12 months. Now, if the club captain is digging everyone else out when he's playing absolutely shocking, then look, that's not a good example to be setting, and that sets a bad culture within the squad. And as you said, Phil, it is a snowflake generation, and that's where, look, some of these players don't take accountability, and what they're doing is, I know some of the leaks have left the club, like your Lingards, Pogba's, etc., players who had issues within the media before. Like, that sets such a bad precedent within the dressing room that if you're not playing well and you don't like who's playing next to you, oh look, I'm going to go to this journalist and I'm going to leak this, to try and make myself look better. And unfortunately, it's, we're in this generation now where I think not just United, but just in football in general, most of these big players now don't take accountability. They hide behind their agent, they hide behind the media, and again, it's the football isn't the same way it was 5 years ago, even 5 years ago, like 10 years ago. It's not the same. And again, I think there's not many players out there these days who don't have that character, who can take that accountability and pump their chest up and actually say, like, look, I'm at fault, I'm going to get better. But look, I suppose when you look at the culture of Man United, which Ten Hag, by the way, is trying to make better, and he's instilling good principles in the squad. We can't have situations like this happen when Ten Hag is trying to rebuild the culture of the club, and not just the culture, but obviously the form of the football club. Wayne says here in the comments, Evening Wayne, he says, even if it is other players' faults, they are not going to feel comfortable with him back in the side now. Now he said that if his comments are true, there's obviously somebody leaking to Ogden, whoever it is. I think that's very important as well, because there's no smoke without fire in this situation. Now, it mightn't have been Maguire himself who leaked these comments to Ogden, but like in this situation, he would have said this to somebody, like whether it's a friend, family member, or whoever, and they've leaked it. And again, this has happened again on an international break. We've seen this trend continue. We had it when Pogba was at the club, and now it wasn't necessarily Pogba that was leaking. Leaking. It was his agent, who was his brother, who he's fighting with now, by the way. But there's always a situation post Sir Alex in these international breaks, and again, just as we're I suppose in a good headspace as a football club, on the field, we're now seeing again deja vu in terms of players leaking to the media. And Lee, I was going to come back to you on this comment as well. Wayne says, this echoes what you say. The good captain says we all need to improve, and I am included in that. I think that's a very important thing here with Harry. Is we've seen him to be a good character within the dressing room before, like especially under Solskjaer in his early days at United. Like when Ashley Young left the football club, Maguire gave him the captaincy. So like Solskjaer would have seen something in Maguire though to give him that armband. So like for me, I'm a bit shocked that he's gone down this route of kind of throwing his toys out of the pram.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, on quite a few interviews last season when we was playing terrible, I think he actually did say that we all need to improve, and I'm sure he did say, himself included. And what I've always thought, even last season when he had a shocking season, I thought it was a good character probably to have around in the changing room, and I've always wanted him to come good. All of us want the same thing. We don't want one of our players, especially our captain, to to have a bad season and to carry on that form. And we all want the same goal, and him to to come back and be a great player. I just don't understand why, with what he was saying last year, and like I say, from what I remember, he was kind of digging himself a little bit and taking responsibility to know why it's come out that it's everybody else's fault apart from himself. Like say, if I was in that changing room now, I'd be disappointed, and I'd want to be knowing why he was saying them things. If it was particularly about me, like De Gea, who, let's be honest, De Gea over, I don't know how long he's been here now at United, is more than not been one of our best players of the season on many occasions. So to dig someone out who's probably been one of our better players over a long period of time, it's I find it hard to believe, and that's why it's I keep saying, let's wait to see if it's actually him, what's come out with his comments, or is it someone else like you've just said who's leaked them, and if it is, that needs dealing with internally. And I'm sure with Ten Hag in charge, that that sort of behaviour is not going to be much longer. We've already got rid of the jokers, or a lot of the jokers in the pack, who thought they were bigger than the club. Clearly, there's a couple more what seem to think that they can say and do what they want and get away with it. But I don't think with Ten Hag they're going to do that. So let's just see how it goes. And do you want someone in the club who's leaking to the press all the time and giving this information away? Because, like I said, with me and Phil were playing, obviously we talk to teammates and say if someone was having a bit of an off season or a bit of a bad few games, we might say what the hell's going on there? What's up with him? But you'd go and have a quiet word and you put your arm around them, and you try, like Phil said, you do a bit of constructive criticism and try and help out. And the first team used to do that a lot with the younger lads. And it was ideal, like I say, to progress and to help each other out, not chuck each other under the bus, which seems to be happening again, and it shouldn't be happening at all, really. But like I say, hopefully with Ten Hag, it won't happen for much longer.
Hopefully, it is nipped in the bud, because look, we are in a good vein of form right now. It looks like there is a lot like on the field, judging from performances. There seems to be a lot of togetherness within the squad. So hopefully, when the international break is over, that with Ten Hag can come in, he can meet, and then this gets nipped in the bud very quickly. That's if it's true. Like, look, if Odkin is spreading BS, then look, at the end of the day, that also needs to be called down. He needs to be banned from any press conference and the Ten Hag holds, like Ferguson used to do down years when the previous people did spread misinformation within the media about United or its players or whatever. But we're going to move away from the Maguire conversation now. We're actually going to talk about something a bit more positive. Diogo Dalot, Phil. In the last 4 games post Brentford, he's been one of our, I suppose, better players. He seems to be in very good form. He seems to be very passionate, and he seems to be, again, we talk about accountability. Dalot came out the other day and said that this current crop of players want to be remembered as a squad that brought Manchester United back. When you look at his performances and you hear statements like that, like what do you make of Diogo Dalot's mentality at the football club in terms of going from a point where he wasn't going to be an important player, but now looks like, if he was to come out of the side, we'd actually be struggling?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you've got to commend his mentality and his sort of attitude, because, he's certainly not been a regular starter up until sort of recently. And I think, that has definitely shown a little bit of resolve, because, there was a point where we was all maybe thinking, yeah, he's not good enough to be at Man United, and he should be, moved on and all that kind of thing. I think obviously, it's boiled down to 3 or 4 things for me with Dalot. I think his form in recent times have come down to he's playing regular football. B, he's now in a settled team where he's got players around him that he knows and he can get used to playing, building a relationship, with the likes of Varane and the back four. And then he's obviously got a winger in front of him now where he's playing with them regular, and he's building that relationship like we've seen over the other seasons with like Shaw and Rashford when they had that sort of relationship. And then C, it comes with winning games. I think, your confidence and all that comes inevitably from teams playing well and winning games. And I think the last sort of, couple of months since the Brentford game, I think, the team's been really good. And I wouldn't have thought that, obviously, after the start we made, the drastic change and the drastic sort of form that we've shown has been down to a lot of the performances, and Dalot's been a big part of that for me. I think, I'm still a little bit unconvinced with him defensively. That's just me being honest. Lee might disagree with that. But in terms of on the ball and going forward, I think he's massively improved, and he's definitely stepped up to the mark, and he's worthy of, his starting position for me at the moment. And I think for me, obviously, as I said, when he was in that little period where, he was maybe not going to be in the plans, he was maybe looking at, getting binned off, and there's all that sort of uncertainty around his future. He seemed to sort of, still have the attitude that he's, wanting to be a part of the club, still training well, knuckled down. He's obviously got his chance and he's taken it. And you need them kind of players, most definitely in a successful squad, because if you've got players who are mentally weak and when they do have that little dip in form or they're not in the team, they sulk or, they look to blame other people, like we've just talked about with Maguire. Then you're never going to have a successful squad. So yeah, big sort of hats off to him. I think he's done brilliant, and long may that continue. As I say, still not 100% convinced on him defensively, but as I said, I think that'll only get better with playing more games, and as I say, nobody's perfect, and I think the way he gets forward and his quality on the ball sort of makes up for that little chink in the armour, if you like.
Lee, as a fullback, what do you make of his performances so far?
First and foremost, like Phil just said, it's chalk and cheese to the first 20 minutes, what we've talked about with Maguire, as opposed to, he's not looked to blame anybody else. He's kept quiet. He's obviously worked and trained his balls off to get back to where he should be. I seem to remember when Mourinho signed him, Mourinho was telling us all he was going to be one of the best fullbacks in the world. And no one writ him off more last season than I did, let's be honest, even on the podcast. I couldn't believe even when he got on as a substitute because I thought he was terrible. I'll be absolutely honest. He gave me no confidence whatsoever in seeing what he could do this season. I'd have sold him. I'd have got rid of him. I'd have sent him away on a free. I'll be honest with you. To see him now, he's a complete different player. He looks like he's reinvented himself. He's rejuvenated. His confidence is 100 times better than it was last season on the ball. And I agree with Phil. Not 100% convinced defensively yet, but from last season defensively to this season is 10 times more solid. Every time it was one-on-one last season, I used to put my hand over my eye thinking he's going to get done again. I was a bit embarrassed for him. This season, he seems to be winning more one-on-ones than actually getting beat. He's been great on the ball. He's joined in. And let me tell you, from, like I say, a defensive point of view, there's nothing better than playing in a settled back four and being successful. It's like a team within a team, and that's how we always got brought up at United when we was, in a settled back four, and you knew you was playing with X, Y, and Z, and you was playing well, and you was keeping clean sheets, and you was tucking round, and you was helping each other out, and you knew where your centre back would be. There's nothing better in football than when you've got a solid, settled back four, and it's probably reaping the benefits of that, if I'm being honest. I think Martinez has been a brilliant signing, absolutely fantastic signing. I think he's helping us out massively, and he's probably helping Dalot out a lot too. I've said it for years. When Birdman is 5'9", I get it. He's 5'9", he's small for a centre back, but he's got the heart of someone who's 6'9", and he's that type of defender. Got a bit of grit, a bit of determination, a bit of nastiness in him. He's quick, he's good on the ball. I think him and Eriksen this year have been fantastic signings for us. And I think, like I say, with him and Veranda being a settled back, two centre-back pairings, if we can keep that going and we can keep that form, what they've got, that'll only help the full-backs out. And yeah, it's been day and night watching the back four this season than it was last season. Like I say, Maguire, going back to Maguire, he's had umpteen different partnerships in his time at United, and not one really looked very successful. There was probably a period where him and Lindelof looked like they was going to be, settled, but too slow, a lack of pace with both of them. And I'm struggling to see if the form continues of Varane and Martinez, how any of the other two are going to get a kick.
Yeah, like I struggle to see it myself when I look at how solid Rafael Varane and Martinez are. Like, to see their understanding, like if Varane's taking the man, Martinez is sweeping off, and vice versa. Like, to see that the communication levels between the two of them, is a lot better. They're actually playing a couple of yards higher than what Maguire and Lindelof would have played. That's helped us. Also, as well, if you look at the ball playing ability of Martinez, I don't see how Harry Maguire gets back into this team, even though Maguire is decent on the ball, whereas Martinez, in my opinion, is elite on the ball.
Yeah, I think the only way I can see Maguire ever getting a chance again is if Varane's form dips. Which, like I say, last year I didn't hide it on the podcast that I wasn't a massive fan of what he did last year. I don't think he did much better than Maguire was doing, if I'm being honest.
Do you think Harry Maguire's lack of confidence and lack of pace actually made maybe Varane look worse, even though Maguire's talking about players making him look worse? Yeah. To play devil's advocate, that, do you think maybe Harry Maguire made Varane look worse than he actually was?
Varane was probably thinking, well, if he gets done on the one-on-one, or ball gets put over the top, and it's you can't hide the fact that Maguire is a cart horse. Let's be honest, he's on the turn. He's very slow at turning. He's very slow at getting back into position. But that's not his fault. That's the kind of player he is. That's the centre back he is. We all knew that before we bought him, about his lack of pace. But like I say, that could have been playing on Varane's mind. That he's got one eye on his own game, but also one eye on what he's going to need to do if he gets done for pace. And more often than not, last season, Maguire was getting done for pace. So, like I said, now he doesn't have to worry about that. Martinez is quick, he's determined. I think he's undroppable. I actually do think Martinez is undroppable. And it's going to be a battle for me to. He's going to be partnershiping with him, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like when you look at Martinez, like I think look, he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet alongside Christian Eriksen. I think we look at everyone across the team sheet, like De Gea obviously, and then you have like Martinez, Eriksen. At the moment, Scott McTominay as well. Like he's probably undroppable at the moment as well. You look at them core couple of players; they're probably the players at the minute who are like all undroppable in Erik ten Hag's eyes. Phil, I want to move on to the midfield on this because obviously we're seeing a brilliant midfield three at the moment of McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes. And obviously Casemiro is coming up to speed and he's dropping into playing in some games as well. Donny van de Beek is injured at the minute. Now it actually hasn't been specified what the injury actually is. Now he looks like he's in Holland at the minute. He looks like he's in the gym and he looks like he's obviously over to watch the international duty as well. How does Donny van de Beek get back into this squad when you look at not only the form of Eriksen, Bruno Fernandes is starting to play his best again. He's contributing with goals and assists. Scott McTominay looks reborn in midfield. Casemiro, you'd like to imagine will be playing games, and even Fred's playing, all right when he's getting into the team as well. What are you thinking now if you're Donny van de Beek? Because you have the manager who created him, basically, who made him into the player he is today. But you look at all the different facets of Man United's midfield at 6, 8, and 10. All these players are performing. And how does it like an injured Donny van de Beek when he fully gets fit? How does he get into this team? Like, what is he thinking right now?
I have no idea, is the honest answer. I think, we've talked about Van de Beek numerous times on the podcast. And for me, all the players you've just mentioned, he's definitely behind all them. And we've not even mentioned some of the younger lads. And for me, Iqbals and Hannibals and people like that, they're other players that I'd sort of have higher in the pecker order than him at this moment in time, just off, what I've seen when I've seen them play, even though they've only had little cameo roles and stuff. I've seen more in them than what I have in Van de Beek. And as you say, it's a strange one because initially when Ten Hag came in, I think a lot of people, including myself, was thinking, right, this could be the sort of rebirth of Van de Beek because obviously Ten Hag worked with him closely. He's made him into the player that he was and the player that we signed. And it's just crazy to see that, he's just completely fallen off a cliff. And whether that's, to do with the English league and whether it's too quick for him, whether it's too powerful, whether he's not, up to speed. I literally don't know because, it seems to me that he's definitely not doing enough in training because, Lee'll back me up on this. You get picked on a Saturday from what you do in training, and if you're not working hard in training and you're not doing the sort of stuff in training, then you wouldn't be in the squad on a Saturday. Now he's had ample opportunities with injuries and suspensions and people not playing well, and if he was doing even half decent in training, I think he would have probably been given a couple of chances, and he's just not been anywhere near any of the squads, and I can't understand for the life of me what is going on with him because you can't, as you say, you don't turn into a bad player overnight. But what you can do is if you take your eye off the ball and you stop working hard and you feel sorry for yourself and, you sort of down tools because you don't think, the manager likes you or, you can soon find yourself sort of left with nothing. And I think for me, Van de Beek now has got a big decision. And for me, the only reason the only way I can see him sort of playing, any regular football and trying to sort of reignite himself is moving away because I don't think he's going to get into the team anytime soon. I think he's well down the pecking order. If the manager who was playing your best football under isn't giving you an opportunity, then, what chance have you got? So for me, it's a case of now maybe just get until January and then seeing if you can go somewhere else and try and get some regular football because as I say he's gone to Everton and don't think that really worked out for him. So whether it may be moving back abroad and going to another league where it may suit him a little bit more, because it's definitely not worked out since he's come over to the Premier League.
I think you're right, Phil. Just to butt in a little bit, I think it's just a perfect example of a player what's just not suited to the Premier League. You know, he's got the attributes to be a great player, but every time I've watched him, and I've said it before, he does the simple things really well. You know, the 1-2 touch passing, and you know, the nice bits of easy stuff he does really well, and that's probably suited to let's say Dutch league, or you know, even the Italian league and things like that. But in the Premier League, you need to have a little bit more about you than that. You know, and like you just said, he's been given. He's a lovely guy. Everybody wants him to do well. You know what I mean? You don't even know him, and you want the guy to succeed, no matter where he goes and what he does. He seems that type of character. I just don't think it's going to work for him. Not only at United, like you said, with Everton. I know he had injuries and all that lot, but I just don't think his style of play is suited to the league, and I don't think he's got what it takes to adapt his game to what it is now. So if I was him, you know, I'd be looking at you know, saying my goodbyes and trying to get some game time elsewhere, even going back, like I say, to Ajax or the Dutch league, and you know, go and be a star over where you can do what you can do in the league where you can do it. You know, play for your national team and fulfill your potential elsewhere.
Yeah. And even if you look at Ajax, the minute they've like Berghuis and Tadic, he probably doesn't get into Ajax's team now. Like if you look at their current team now as well, like for me, like with Van de Beek, it's not even a difficult one anymore, because I look at Eriksen right now, and he's giving us everything we thought Van de Beek was going to give us, and what Paul Pogba was going to give us. You have Fernandes in there who actually has simplified his game, but actually is still as effective in number 10 right now. And like Ten Hag is making him captain. Well, I know Harry Maguire is club captain, but like players like Anthony and other players are calling Bruno captain at the minute. So what that suggests to me is, if and when Maguire is stripped of captaincy or leave, Bruno's going to be captain.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be Bruno when he gets the captaincy. Like I say, what if he still had faith in Van der Beek, would he have gone out and bought Casemiro? You know, but we've got the midfield and we've got the depth of midfield what we need now for the squad. And like I said, I don't think Donny Van der Beek fits in even the squad anymore. Unfortunately, I would have loved him to have proved everybody wrong, you know, and started him and been a fantastic player for us because he's a likeable character. But I just don't think he's nowhere near even a squad player at the moment.
Yeah, and the problem with this is as well is that you have like Bruno, you have Eriksen, McTominay seems to be coming into his own. Fred is still there and was a great utility player. But also you have to take into consideration what United want to do next summer as well. Because if they don't go back in for Frankie de Jong, it looks like we're going in for Yuri Tielemans or someone like that. Like these names are being mentioned already. And like if you look at Tielemans' contract situation, he's available on a free next summer. So like United are in for him, they're in for Bellingham. Like these players are getting mentioned. There's no way in God's green earth, I don't think, like Donny van de Beek stays. No. And for him, like personally, he was playing for Holland. He was nominated for Ballon d'Or. All this before he came to United. And then his career's after going downhill since he come to United. And look, again, we've seen great footballers come to this football club and it hasn't worked out for him. Even when we're winning everything. Like Varane, like the biggest example I look at is Varane was an exceptional player.
I was just going to use that as an example, mate. That's the example I had in my head.
Yeah, like you both would have been at the club when Varane was there, and he came in, big superstar, big reputation, and it didn't work out for him either. For whatever, well, look, you had Keane and Scholes as competition, like for crying out loud. Like there's multifaceted different reasons why that didn't work out. But like, look, this is like Van de Beek is seen a similar situation, whereas there's players in that position who play that similar role that are just better fits. And unfortunately, you know, for his sake, if he wants to get back into that Dutch squad, especially Van Gaal as manager, he's going to have to leave. Yeah. He's 110% going to have to leave. And it can't be a loan deal. He's probably going to have to go in January if he wants to salvage his career. Because if he stays here till, let's say, next summer, and knowing the way United do business, he'd probably leave at the end of the window. Like, being realistic. Like, if you look at the way we try to sell players, we're great at making big money signings, but we drag them out, but we're even worse at selling players. And knowing our board, they'd want some sort of decent deal for him. So if I'm Donny van de Beek, I'm looking at getting out in January. I'm handing in a transfer request right now, so it gives the club time to actually negotiate with teams and put them in the shop window. And And obviously, it's after the World Cup as well, where you never know what situation could be with certain clubs. Like, players can have injuries and whatnot, coming out of that. So, like, Donny needs to leave for his own sake. And again, there's nothing against him. I dare to say he's a nice guy. He's probably a decent character. And he does work hard to an extent. But look, some leagues aren't made for players, and look, that's okay. Like, I bet you if he goes to La Liga or Bundesliga, he'd absolutely tear it up, like 100%. But like, look, again, the Premier League just isn't made for him, and look, that's okay.
Yeah, I agree, and I think he comes across as like a really nice, quiet, sort of timid kind of person, and I think in the English Premier League, sort of, you need to have a little bit of a tenacity about you and a little bit of a nasty streaks at times. And
just look at what Ireland's done at City, Phil. Do you know what I mean? It's a perfect example of it, innit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's come over here and absolutely tearing it up because he's got that ruthlessness and because he's got that bit of edge about him. You know what I mean? Donny doesn't seem to have that.
And it's about having belief in your own ability. And I think he got off on the wrong foot straight off the bat when he came and sort of, didn't maybe hit the form that he was thinking, had a couple of bad performances and then he was in and out the team. Whereas, you look at these other players who have come and hit the ground running, they've smashed it straight from the get-go and the first name on the team sheet now. And he's just never sort of been in that position. So I do feel for him in a way, but football's a sort of harsh environment and you've got to, make your own bit of luck and you've got to sort of, your performances and the way you are as a person sort of sometimes, get you in the team. And I think he's just not that kind of player for me. He just looks a little bit sort of too nice. And as we say, the Premier League's probably just a little bit too much for him and he would probably do well at another club in another league. So I wish him all the best, really, because I don't think he's done anything wrong as such. Just don't think it's quite worked out for him.
Yeah, and again, it's one of them where it's a situation where it doesn't work out. But look, everyone knows he does have quality, and he is well respected in world football. Like, he has a good reputation. So I'd say, like, look, he won't have a problem finding a club. But if I was him, I would leave the Premier League because, to be fair, none of the top six sides are going to go for him. And even at that, you look at teams outside the top six, like Wolves and stuff like that. He doesn't get into their midfields either at the minute, like Ruben Neves and players like that. And I think it's one of them where he probably has to go abroad to go back and rebuild himself, rebuild, his form, reputation, and just get back into football because that's what he needs to do first and foremost. But we talked about players being in form for the club. We talked about Donny van de Beek not getting into the team despite obviously injuries and form of other players. We have an informed player at the moment, lads, Jadon Sancho, Phil. Like, one of our best players probably this season. He's scored goals in the big games. He's delivered in big moments. He was snubbed by Gareth. And obviously, look, I'm going to go on the record here. Like, I'm not an England supporter, so I wouldn't have like massive invested interest. But I looked at the England squad last week. Obviously, 28 players announced. 12 defenders. Jadon Sancho was snubbed by Gareth Southgate. When you look at the form of Jadon Sancho, and you look at Gareth Southgate's mentality, when he first came in, he said he's going to play players off form, not reputation. And then Jadon Sancho doesn't get into the squad. Statistically, one of the best attackers in England at the minute. Like, what are your thoughts on Jadon Sancho not getting into that England squad?
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this last week with Reece, and I think it is a strange one that he's obviously not been picked into the squad. I think obviously this season he's been a lot better than he was last year. As you say, he's got more goals and assists this year already. And yeah, again, it's just, sometimes I think when England squads are picked, for me, Southgate's got his favourites and he's got players that he sort of thinks he can rely on, which is fair enough. But for me, I think Sancho is a player at the moment where he's hit that form now. What we wanted to see when we first signed him, and I think that may dent his confidence a little bit. But for me, I think he's still going to be on the plane to the World Cup. I think this is probably just Southgate maybe wanting to have a look at a couple other players. But for me, if Sancho keeps playing the way he has for club, I think, till the World Cup, he's definitely on the plane because for me, he's been, certainly one of our best players this year. And when you're looking at them positions for England, I think at this moment in time, he's definitely sort of in the top three for me who should be starting really in them positions for England. So I think it's just one of them really. If I'm him, yeah, I'm disappointed. But I'm just going to use that as fuel now to sort of keep performing at club level and doing what I'm doing and prove to everybody, that I should be on that plane and what I'm doing, the manager can't ignore. So it's just a situation for me where he's sort of got to try and get a positive out of it for me and use it to sort of, make him perform even better and prove people wrong. And I think that's where, a lot of performances and a lot of players who get a lot of criticism or maybe don't get the accolades and recognition that they deserve. I think that can work one or two ways. And I think for me, Sancho now just needs to, take that and run with it and try and prove to everybody, including Gareth Southgate, that he deserves to be, going on that plane to the World Cup.
And you look at players like Jared Bowen, who admittedly had a brilliant season last season, and they're getting into the squad when West Ham are struggling at the minute. It kind of it really kind of begs the question, I know he might be on the plane, but has Southgate maybe lost a bit of confidence in him, considering when he brought him to the Euros, he didn't play particularly well, and he's never really kind of been in Southgate's kind of plans. When you look at Southgate's tenure as England manager.
There's quite a few different explanations for it, Keane, and I think Southgate, and he said that he's going to play people on merit, but I don't think notoriously Southgate does that anyway. Like Phil just said, he does have his favourites. It's well known for that. As a United fan, mate, I couldn't care less if he was on that plane or not. I'll be honest with you. Or he's in this squad. He's not. He's one of our informed players at the moment. He's not going to run the risk of getting injured, which is a plus for a United fan. Obviously, as a player, he's going to want to be there because he's going to want to represent his country. So that's going to make him hungrier, and it's going to make him want to fight for his place. Again, great for a United supporter because he's going to hopefully turn in even better performances than he already has been doing and give us a little bit more to prove Southgate wrong. And another thing, Southgate could just be keeping on his toes a little. He's probably realised that he has been one of the better players in that position this year in the country. And he probably there could be a reason where he's thinking, well, let's not just chuck him straight back in. Let's get the best out of him. Let's see what else he can do. And it might be a bit of mind games with him because, like I say, if you're going to go on merit and you're going to go on players you deserve to be in that squad at the beginning of the season, then surely it would have been there. So as a player, I feel for him. As a former player, you always want to represent your country. It's one of my proudest achievements, playing for my country. So I feel for him in that respect. But I don't think it's going to be a bad thing for him, and I don't think it's going to be a bad thing for United. I think it's only positive, really.
Yeah, as a United fan right now, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, right, I'm really worried about Rafael Varane on international duty because he always seems to get injured on France duty. I'm sitting there wondering, Christian Eriksen going out playing with Denmark, score a screamer, by the way, there last night. Absolute screamer. But thinking, geez, I hope he doesn't get injured. McTominay is playing against Ireland tomorrow. Please, God, you drop a 2021 stinker on us tomorrow, McTominay. Please. Hoping he doesn't play well tomorrow, but not hoping he doesn't get injured, by the way. And then I look at Jadon Sancho not getting into the squad, and I'm like, Ten Hag working with him, attention to detail for 2 weeks could be a blessing in disguise. It really could. And again, having McLaren, Mitchell van der Gaag, though Ten Hag all working with him over them 2 weeks, it maybe benefit me even more. And look, I'm even thinking, I know Rashford is out with injury, but he's probably going to be back for the derby as well. And he's been one of our best players as well this season. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise that the two out-of-form players in Luke Shaw and Maguire are both going to England duty and probably will play decent for England. They might come back for the Europa League games. That might push them on. But equally with Rashford and Sancho, not going, they can stay fit. And well, hopefully, in Rashford's case, he just gets back fit, and we need him for the derby because he loves scoring in a big game. But I'm just looking at Sancho and I'm thinking, if he doesn't go to the World Cup, I'm not even English, and I'd be saying Southgate out, to be honest. I really would be. I really would be because he's a top player, and I look at other players. Fair play, Saka is brilliant footballer, and he's probably the main rival for Sancho for that right wing spot. But when I look at players like Bowen, Mount isn't playing very well at the moment. You look at players like that who've got into the squad. Not only that, then he's picking a heap of defenders as well when there's no need. Like there's about 20 right backs in the squad. Like, do you know what I mean? Well, obviously not 20, but you know what I mean. He's picking a heap of right backs. Like, it just beggars belief then Jadon isn't getting in. But as you said, he probably, if he keeps his form up, there's no way he can't be brought to the World Cup. And for England's sake, they need as much attacking flair players as they can, because they can't just rely on Harry Kane and Sterling to dig him out the whole time, because eventually teams will figure that out and they'll man mark them players. So you need players like the Sanchos, the Rashfords, the Sakas of the world, who give that something extra, and obviously help link up play as well. But look, hopefully he can get into the World Cup squad, and he can hopefully stay in good form for United as well between now and obviously the break. But final thing before we go, lads, because obviously, look, there's no game preview, there's no score predictions, starting 11 predictions or whatever. But we are gonna roll one back. It's gonna be a bit of a throwback here, this topic just before we finish up. Roy Keane, obviously, look, it's international break. I'm Irish. Roy Keane, I was named after him. What's your favourite Roy Keane game? As former teammates of Roy Keane at Manchester United. Phil, I'll come to you first in this one. What's your favourite or most memorable Roy Keane game at Man United?
For me, it's Arsenal away. He scored 2. I took Lee's out. But yeah, I just think that game, I think, with the sort of rivalry that he had with Vieira, and obviously the two clubs at the time were the best two clubs in the country. I think that particular game, I remember watching that and sort of, the way he just led by example. Not just because he scored the 2 goals. I just think, the way he carried himself that day. The way he was going into tackles, he was lifting everybody by, his performance and, verbally as a captain should do. Thought it was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, obviously got the 2 goals that sort of won the game as well. So I think that's one of the best games I've seen him as an all-round performance. I like some of the early days as well when he came to the club from Forest and he was playing a little bit more advanced. And scored a couple of more goals than what he sort of did when he dropped back a little bit. But I think in terms of the Roy Keane that I loved and seeing the best out of, I think that game was sort of, one of his best games, just as a whole package for me.
Lee, he obviously had to steal in your one with the Arsenal away one. Fun fact about that one, I was actually living in London at the time. That game, my mother brought me into a pub full of Arsenal fans as a child, and an Irish woman sitting in an Arsenal pub celebrating a Roy Keane goal. It was fair to say we were throwing daggers in the pub that day. When we beat Arsenal at Highbury. But apart from the Arsenal one, is there any other Roy Keane game from your time at the club watching United play, and obviously being involved with the club, but like any other memorable Roy Keane performances?
That's the stick out memory one in the tunnel beforehand with you. That's the one where we're all going to go back to every single time, because he epitomised what it was like to be a Man United captain at the time, didn't it? In that era where you could give it a little bit and you could put a foot in and you could do a bit like that, and he lived and breathed United at that time, and memories are absolutely fantastic what you got from that game. But more or less any other game, really. Like, I remember the City games when he's played in the local derbies, especially against Ireland's dad, when he put him through the ceiling a couple of times and things like that. It's the games like that which, like I say, that epitomised Roy Keane. That type of performance, that type of steel and grit, and willing to win any way possible. He was a fantastic player. And it's not really one game or 2 games what stick out. It's his actual way he performed in the games, especially when it was wound up. And although he did get wound up, and sometimes it got the better of him, he played better sometimes when he was wound up. And he drove the team and got the team going. And that's the type of player I like. And yeah, it'll forever be etched in supporters' memories. with his attitude in his games, like say the Cities and the Arsenals, and the Liverpools when he's been wound up. So that type of game is also, and that type of attitude is what always sticks in my mind with Roy Keane.
Yeah, he was an absolute warrior, and even like when I look at like his time for Ireland as well, obviously you were on the international break, the game against Holland on the lead up to the World Cup, like Ireland weren't fancied to win that game at all, and Roy just like single-handedly pulled Ireland through that game. Obviously, Niall Quinn, Robbie Keane, players like that, but Roy, it's such a shame Saipan and that happened. Because Roy Keane could have really made big memories in that World Cup as well. But yeah, he's a brilliant player, brilliant professional, and look, you see he's still loved by the United fans today. Like even after the Arsenal game, United fans kept singing this song while he was on Sky Sports. They almost they hijacked Sky Sports. But Wayne says here, Turin. So that's obviously the semi-final in 1999.
Yeah.
Header.
Yeah, the header. Yeah.
I'm intrigued there with Wayne to say that. What's the other two individual performances in United history that he ranks higher than that, or as well as that?
Yeah, Wayne, since you are in the comments, or if you're free, we'll send you the stream. Jump into StreamYard and let us know what the other two individual performances in United history are up there. I'm intrigued to that. Wayne, please let us know in the comments, or jump into StreamYard and let us know what the other individual performances in United history are. But yeah, like, look, I think he was someone who, like, if we talk, I know we kind of talked about Harry Maguire at the start of the pod, and we talked about like captaincy and captains and taking accountability for things. But Roy Keane was literally that. He'd rather die in the pitch than lose a game and not put in 100% effort. And he was someone who really epitomized what it means to be a Man United player. I think, like, look, when you look at players nowadays, that they're not built like him.
No.
And like I can imagine throwing Roy Keane into a dressing room full of players now. We wouldn't have any players left, I'd say.
No. Honestly, I think, I've watched a lot of players talk from sort of the era when we was there. Like I watched the Paul Scholes overlap with Gary Neville yesterday, and the way he sort of talks and when you hear Roy Keane, it's just a completely different generation. And as you say, if Roy Keane was about nowadays, then, some of these players would probably want to retire because he'd be, on them that much because of the way they are. And obviously the desire that he's got and sort of the lack of desire that we see from certain individuals. Players are built different. Roy Keane was a winner. Win at all costs, leave everything out there on the pitch. If it weren't good enough, then, he's big enough to hold his hands up, but he'd make sure it was, better next time and that they'd make sure they get the result the next time. Whereas nowadays, it doesn't seem like some of these players are that bothered if they win, lose or draw. It's just, right, here we go again next time and apologise on social media, and they think that that's, going to cut the mustard when really, fans can see through that. And if you're not working hard and you're not putting in the shift, you're not doing the basics well, the standards are at Man United that's a minimum, and you need to be doing that on a regular basis. So yeah, it's just one of them. And I think Keane was because we were so lucky to sort of witness that firsthand and see Roy Keane as a person and what he gave to the club, and the sort of unique team spirit that he created because of the way he was. No matter what followed that, it was always going to be a downgrade because that team for me is one of the best in history.
Definitely, and he will go down as one of the greatest captains in United's history, and one of the greatest. But for me, if you're talking Premier League era, I know Robbo was captain kind of pre-Premier League and only early kind of in amongst the early time with Brucey, obviously the early time Premier League. But if you're talking Premier League era since 1992 till present now, I think Roy Keane is the greatest captain of the Premier League era. I know people throw Gerrard's name around there, but he's never won a Premier League. So for me, he can't be the greatest captain in Premier League history. For me, it is Roy Keane. And look, I think I've seen a Twitter post the other day, and it's like, when you hear the word captain, who do you think of? Every time Roy Keane is the first name that comes to my head. Every single time. And when I hear the word captain, he just epitomizes what it means to be a leader. But Wayne has said, just on what Phil said there, He said, haha, well, I don't know about the third, he says, but number one is best in Benfica, 1966. And he said he doesn't know who's third, but what Wayne has said is, good topic for a full podcast. So I'm going to put it down to Wayne here now in the comments that next week we may do a podcast on the, let's say, top 5 greatest performances, individual performances in a Manchester United shirt. And let us know, guys, what you think the best performances were ever in a Man United shirt. We will, because it's the international break, Joe, we actually will discuss that on the next podcast. But on that point, lads, we will wrap it up there. It's been an absolutely fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed your company here today. And do you know what? For once, it actually kind of felt good not to talk about a game, but actually break down other little facets, kind of what's going on in the football club, and especially getting both of your point of views on what feelings might be in the dressing room and stuff like that. So very good conversation.
What's been nice, mate, it's not all been negative like it was last year, because this is one of probably the first time we've all been together proper on a podcast this season, because of one thing, or extra games being cancelled, and then obviously unforeseen circumstances with the Queen and things like that. So it's been nice that we've not actually, one of the first ones we've done all season properly, we've not actually just been digging people out and been negative all the time about our performances. It's nice that we actually look like we're heading in the right direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is, and it is. Do you know what? I think it feels much easier, I'm much more at ease talking about the football club when we're in a good situation, and my blood pressure isn't going through the roof. When talking about performances and digging players out. So you're absolutely right, Leeds. It's a welcome change. And look, hopefully long and may continue as well, because look, all we want is what's best for Man United, and what's best is us getting back to the pinnacle of English football and world football. But on that note, guys, we are going to wrap it up there. Make sure to smash like the video, hit that subscribe button, and this will also be available on our audio platforms as well. So do check that out as well. And look, we will be back next week. We have many things to discuss, and also coming up very shortly, there's just a small matter of the Manchester Derby. So we will be discussing that as well. But until then, guys, thanks very much. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll see you later.